This is a post-banlist deck list for Exosister. First we'll go through the actual Exosister engine of the deck, and then through the utility cards and the extra deck and side deck after. So what you want to see most of is Martha, because this is your one card combo. It gets an extra body on field with its special summon effect. It is also a lock into Exosister, so if you're using this at the beginning of the combo, you can't summon anything but Exosister after. The next card is Elise, which I run 3 of, because this is the card that it summons after its effect. This is a special summon from the hand if you control an Exosister monster as well. So it helps us get more on board if you have one in your hand to further combos. This is the other sister card to Elise, which is Stella. Running 3 of this is really good as well, because you normal summon it, and then from its effect you can special summon an Exosister from hand to get bodies on board, go into your Exceeds, further combos. Then the next one is 3 copies of Sophia. You don't have to run 3 copies of Sophia. A lot of people like to run 2, but if you don't have 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity or something, a third one of these goes in well for the extra draw power. And then to run alongside this, you want 1 or 2 copies of Irene. Personally, I run 1. This is more draw power, but you have to pitch a card to the bottom of your deck of Exosister name, and then you draw 1. So this is now the spell and trap engine of the Exosister deck. 3 copies of Pax is great because it's basically an emergency teleport for Exosisters. This can also search other spells and traps of the Exosister name, which is great if you've got your monsters and you need to find one of your traps or something. The next spells is 1 Carpe Diem and 1 Armament. Carpe Diem's really good because it's spell and trap destruction on attack declaration. It locks out card names, so it's a good out to nib, evenly matched, goes and match, all that sort of stuff like that. It shuts it down. And armament isn't necessarily needed, but it's a good way to actually get into your Exosister monsters if you have one Exosister, because you just set it, activate it beginning of your opponent's turn, then you can go into a Malakis or something and get a banish off of that effect. The traps of the actual Exosister engine, then what I run is 2 Returnia, because it's 2 effects. The first one is target banish from field or graveyard on your opponent's side, and the second effect after that, if you have an Exceed summon, is that you can immediately after Exceed summon an Exosister monster. But if you've used Magnifica's effect to Exceed summon the turn you use this card, you then get a second non-targeting banish. The next traps, I run 2 Vardis because these are just great for seeing names on board. It allows you to special summon 2 Exosisters that name each other, which if you've set it, it goes back to your turn. If you've not seen a Pot of Prosperity, you can activate this special summon Sophia and Irene and draw 2 essentially if they don't get negated, which is just great for seeing the engine pieces if you need them. And then 2 Pot of Prosperities. It's really good in this deck because there's a lot of cards that you can easily pitch from the extra deck. So then obviously you get to your Martha a lot easier, which you do want to see 99% of the time because that's going to be a combo starter. Now on to the interactions, utility, hand traps, or whatever you want to call them for the deck. 3 Ash Blossom is just great. You know, stopping cards getting from hand, special summoning from deck and whatnot. A lot of decks do it, so it's just good to have. And then 3 copies of Dimension Shifter, because a lot of decks crumble under Dimension Shifter, whereas Exosister isn't even really bothered by it, because a lot of cards do need stuff in the graveyard. Obviously, Kashiri is the only thing that will not really be bothered about this in Philanderies, but that's always a bad matchup for deck, to be fair, so it's just one of them. And then onto spell utility, I like running 2 copies of Spellbound. Any deck that needs to summon from the extra deck using cards on the field will shut down to this. It stops cards on the field being summoned. It stops cards being used for extra deck summons on the field until the end of the turn, so it's just a great shutdown, especially against the new Blackwing stuff, because they need to use the one on the field and then they can use one from the deck, but if they can't use the one on the field, then they just shut down. One Harpy's Feather Duster, we all know what that does. One Called by the Grave, great out to Ash, or any sort of hand traps that need to be sent to a graveyard. That is a monster. It's just an easy stop for it. And then for all the decks that love to use the graveyard would be Necro Valley, because Necro Valley makes it that you can't banish cards from the graveyard, or sorry, you can't move cards from the graveyard, so you can't summon from the graveyard. It shut down Totally Awesome's effect because it can't actually move anything from the graveyard, so that effect can't be activated. One copy of Terraforming to search it. And then for the traps of interaction utilities, 3 Imperm, which is either the hand trap if you've got no on the field to stop a monster effect, or if you've set it, it's on field negate and then spell trap colon shut down for that turn. And 1 copy of Macrocosmos. Makes it any card that is sent to graveyard is just banished instead. Obviously Exosister play into that really well because they're not really too bothered about the graveyard. Right, and now onto the extra deck Exosister engine. You want 3 copies of Malakis because it's an easy rank 4 to make in the deck. When it's summoned using an Exosister on the turn it's summoned, they all have these sort of effects. This one gets a target banished from field. And removing material is also a spell trap search for Exosister, meaning you can get to your packs. So you can get to your Martha or a different spell trap. You can keep it if you've already got your engine for next turn. You can do a lot of good stuff, but you can even set up 4 banishes in 1 turn by getting Returnier to your hand. The next one is Capsule, which I run 2 of. It's quite good because this one, when it's summoned, it stops your opponent from summoning from the graveyard. Well, either player actually. And this one, remove material, is a monster search. So if you've not seen your Martha in any other way, but you've been able to make some, make Capsule to go into your Martha, because then you can use Martha's effect to go into another rank 4, use that's effect, and then make your rank 8. 2 copies of Gabrine. This one's just great. It's a target quick effect negate, which is amazing. It does have to target a card on the field to do that, and its remove effect is detach all exceeds cards you control and will control for the rest of the turn, gain 800 attack, which is great for boosting your boss monster. Then 2 Astolfo. This one I don't use as much, but it has a lot of good utility because this one, this one's effect when it's Exceed summoned with an Exosister stops card effects in the graveyard being activated for the turn, which is great for shutting down graveyard decks if you haven't seen your Necro Valley yet, because you most likely do need to see your Necro Valley most games. Its effect to detach a material is a bounce back to hand or extra deck depending on what card you target on field. And now for the boss monster of the deck, which is 2 copies of Magnifica Iron. This one's great, 28 beta. 2 rank 4 Exosister monsters to make it. It can attack twice each battle phase. And it has 2 effects. The first one is a quick effect, non-target banish for its detached material. And then the second effect is when your opponent activates a card or effect, you detach one of the materials to it, send it to the extra deck, and then summon it back on top of Magnifica, making Magnifica material. Which is great for getting out of cards that target Magnifica, because then its target's gone from field, stuff like Change of Heart, stuff that just isn't good. This also does the 4 card banish essentially in that turn, because if you have Malakis attached under it, you first use Magnifica's banish, remove the other material, your opponent activates a card effect, swap it out for Malakis, then you can use Malakis as banish. And if you have Returnier set, then you get 2 banishes from that card because you have then Exceed summoned in that turn. And now onto the utility of this deck. Cowboy. Just a great little nifty card. If at times getting close, you can use its effect to burn for 800 points of damage to like clinch games. Drill Driver is a good rank on top of. It gets you out of some sticky situations, but I mainly use it as a ditch for Pot of Prosperity because I'd rather use it in that way and get Martha into my hand to do my combos. Zeus, because Zeus is just great anyway. It's a board wipe. If you use Magnifica as it after attacking twice, you've got your 2 material on it if you've used your banish, so then you've got a full board wipe. And finally, Lynn the Light Charmer, which is quite good, especially in the current format where people are trying to Ibly lock people. It means you've got an Exceeds in your extra deck that you can attempt to summon. It's also good as well because in game states later on, if you've already got Magnifica in your graveyard or on the field and you're not bothered about having it on the field for a second, you can link it off for Lynn and then use Lynn's effect to target it in the graveyard to special summon it back to the field, which is just useful in many situations. Right, and now onto the side deck for the deck list. 3 Dark Ruler No Mores because it's a great staple. If going second after the first game, it's a great way to shut off an opponent's board so they can't really do too much. Obviously, keep in mind that you can't swing for game when you've used it. 1 copy of Dimensional Fissure because it's useful for keeping the banishers up if you were to swap out your dimension shifters for something in your side deck. It just keeps like the pressure on for banishing stuff. 2 copies of Twin Twister because there isn't too much back row removal in the main deck itself. You will tend to use a lot more of the banishing on monster cards, so it's just a great way to keep that up. 1 copy of Secret Village because if Necro Valley isn't really doing its job, but your opponent is using a lot of spells, stuff like Runic, if you can get rid of their monster, they cannot activate spells and traps, and it just shuts them down. 2 copies of Triple Tactics. A lot of cards in the current meta will try and do stuff in your turn, so it is really good to keep this on side for extra draw power, removal, card control. 3 copies of Nibiru because everything at the minute deck-wise, more times than not, will fill its claws to summon itself, and then you get to clear board, which is great. And finally, 3 copies are Evenly Matched. Great way to remove board stuff. Obviously, bear in mind that they will get to keep 1 card on board, so just try and use it when they've filled their board. You can activate it from your hand as a hand trap as well if you have an empty board, which is great. This was my Exosister deck profile. If you'd like to see any more content like this or any other content, please comment, like, subscribe, and ring that bell.